Hey guys, project-zodiac here. I'm back with another video, and this is a video I've been meaning to do for a very long time now, and I thought it would be perfect to start this now considering one of my favorite movie series is about to release its new movie later this week. So this is going to be me basically reviewing all of the Scream movies. This is Scream 1 through Scream 5. Scream 6 comes out this week, and I'm so excited for that. I'll be doing a separate review for that, so definitely keep a lookout for that. Keep in mind as well that this video, I'm gonna try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. So that means I'm not gonna be saying who dies, I'm not gonna be saying the names of the killers or anything like that. I'm just giving my general thoughts. I wish I could be a little bit more open with my thoughts, but again, I'm trying to make this as spoiler free as possible, but there might be a few things here and there where you might think it's a spoiler. But again, like big things, I'm going to try to keep that as spoiler free. So we have 5 movies to get through, and there's a lot, and I have a lot to say. As I said, this is basically one of my favorite horror movie series in general. So let's just go straight into it with the first movie, Scream. So I remember seeing this movie when I was really little, probably about 5 years old at my house, as my stepdad and my older brother rented it. I even remember there being pizza and us kind of watching it and me sitting like on the edge of the sofa, like the armrest of the sofa, and just watching it on the TV. And yeah, they kind of let me watch it. So basically, this is a true classic. All of the characters are well done and they have personality that's very memorable. The plot and the story itself is structured so well, and it actually gets you so invested in figuring out who is basically the killer and what is going on and what is the reason for all of this. Also, the deaths are very, very brutal and really well done. And I have to say it, the Ghostface costume is so iconic yet so simple, and the voice is really well done and hypnotic at the same time while still being scary as well. Basically, the who is the killer concept, along with the clues that they provide, is great, and we can really piece it together, especially if you're paying attention. But that doesn't mean that it's really predictable. Also, one of the best things about the Scream series is the meta style of the story and how self-aware it is. This is also so fantastic with this movie because it's a true homage to the horror movies and basically the technology they had at the time. I also kind of want to talk a little bit about the score and the soundtrack in this movie, which is actually pretty great, especially the techno song that plays at the very end of the movie right before the credits hit. I still don't really know the name of that song. I was looking it up the other day. If anyone knows it, please tell me. But basically, this movie holds strong even in modern times, which is really surprising. But yeah, you can kind of even say that this was kind of filmed in the modern times, just using things from, like it's set in the 90s, because it just holds up so well. But yeah, this movie is really well done, and it's still way ahead of its time as well in so many ways. So for the first Scream movie, I have to give it a 9 out of 10. Now, let's get into the second movie, Scream 2. I'm just going to say this right away. I like the mask for Ghostface so much better in the first movie, but I love how even more meta this movie is compared to the first one, and even more self-aware as well. It also holds up pretty well by today's standards as well, and it's also still ahead of its time. It was also really good to see what happened after the first movie and how time had passed and how everyone has been affected, which is fantastic because not a lot of movies really do that. Also, it's great to see the reason for why there's a new killer and how it's all connected. And it's also really good to see them basically touching on smaller things that were hinted in the first movie but never really touched on in depth, just hinted on, and they really built up on those things. Also, I just wanted to say that the music here is not as good as it is in the first movie, but it's still pretty good, and some of the score in this movie really does scream Twin Peaks, if anyone's ever seen that show. But it's, it's done in a good way. I kind of like it. It's kind of cheesy. But yeah, definitely watch Twin Peaks if you guys haven't. It's pretty good. But for the bad things about this movie, the ending was not as tense or as crazy as the first movie, though it was definitely a lot more psychological, and that mind game element on Sydney was done really, really well. Also, the new characters are kind of just okay, and the motive of some of the killers are kind of bland. Uh, but at the same time, some of the motives is actually pretty good. Also, it was a bit easy to figure out who one of the killers is in this movie, but the twist of the second one is pretty well done. The kills also, I don't really think that they were as good as the first one. Really, only two kills were pretty good. One was with a legacy character, and the other one was just the opening kills. Also, the killers also felt super clumsy and really dumb here. And some of the aspects of the script seem kind of rushed or lifeless compared to the first movie. But still, it's great overall. But I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Now, as for Scream 3, the Ghostface mask here is so much better than the second movie. Anyway, the great meta-ness continues, as does the self-awareness, and as always, it's done really well. And also, it was really good to see where the characters are in their lives, and their development is also pretty realistic and really well done, especially with Sydney. What they do with her here is fantastic and handled really well and really realistic. Honestly, this is done so much better than how the Halloween movies ever handled Laurie. This movie also has a lot more of a tense tone than the second movie. And also, lots of people hate the voice changing effect in this movie, but I kind of think it's really cool, smart, and honestly really unique. Though I do have to question, when people are right next to Ghostface, how do they not hear his actual voice? That's honestly a theme for all of the Scream movies, not just this one though. But anyway, as this voice changing gimmick works and the movie as a whole stands, it honestly stands really well in modern times, especially with AI voices kind of being a thing and becoming more and more common. Honestly, my only complaint with the voice situation isn't even really the gimmick. It's more that it was basically just shown way too early, and also that the main Ghostface voice seems different. I even had to check to see if it was basically the same voice actor or if it was someone else doing the voice for Ghostface. It sounds good and kind of the same, but honestly, it also sounds a lot less raspy and a lot less serious. It kind of has a more open and clear tone to it than the past movies. Also, because of the voice changing gimmick, they kind of focus less on the new characters in order to focus more on the story. And this is fine, but there's very little clues to piece together who the killer is. So it kind of just feels like a revelation that makes sense, but one that didn't really have many clues for. And this is kind of similar with the situation that was kind of present with one of the killers from the second movie. But anyway, also because of this, we also get to see less of Ghostface. And speaking of Ghostface and seeing less of him, he kind of just teleports very often, so that was also really strange. Like in one scene, he's right here, you see him knocked down, then the next, he's somewhere totally different. Or there's this one scene, no real spoilers, but they're just shooting at these mirrors and he's there chasing someone, but when you see all the mirrors, he's not there and that person is hurt. Like, it makes no sense how that happened. Again, not really a spoiler, it's just giving some context to that. I also feel like there wasn't a lot of killing in this movie, but some of the kills were actually pretty creative, a little bit more so than the last movie. But even so, changing topics from the killers now, going back to my thoughts on just the movie itself, it kind of feels like this movie was more of the team just basically piecing together a backstory. But my complaint with that is that this piecing together the backstory kind of goes nowhere, and it's kind of just put to the side because they basically find out everything because the killer reveals everything at the end. So everything that they were kind of like piecing together, it literally just gets dropped up, and then the killer's like, oh yeah, here's just everything. So you can't really like piece together what is going on, how this is all connected with the killer, because they kind of just drop them looking at clues and the killer just kind of reveals everything. So I kind of didn't really like that. So because they kind of do it like this, it kind of makes that like 1/3, maybe almost 2/3 of the movie is kind of a bit pointless, just because those one third, almost two thirds, is them literally just looking at clues. But either way, it was still done pretty well. Also, I do think that the motives this time was a little bit weaker compared to the rest, uh, but it is understandable and it is a great twist. Though I will say this, it's not really revealed or explained how we find out that the killer is alive in one particular scene, considering they kind of look into it, and it seemed like the killer was dead. But yeah, I don't really want to get into spoilers with that. So that was a little, again, another thing that just kind of didn't really make sense. Also, there are moments that come straight out of Scooby-Doo in this movie, which kind of made it funny in a way. And also, this is not the last time you're going to see a Scooby-Doo reference in this review. But overall, those are really just some of the complaints I had. It's still a really good movie for many reasons, especially the backstory and everything. Um, but it is technically the worst of the movies so far, given some of these issues. So, because of all that, I give Scream 3 a 6.5 out of 10. And I'm just really glad overall that that wasn't the last movie in this series. So, going on to Scream 4, which came out a very long time after Scream 3. Uh, Basically, Scream 4, as always, there's great meta and self-awareness in this movie, and it also does a great job at showing where everyone has been in the past many years and how they've all been in general and how far they've come. Also, this movie still holds up really well by today's standards. I mean, it still is technically pretty recent still, so that makes sense. But it's still also kind of ahead of its time. Again, still recent, but still ahead of its time. Also, the new characters are done pretty well, definitely way better than the third movie, and honestly, kind of better than the second movie as well. Also, Ghostface's voice is back to the way it was in the first movie, and it's just perfect. Like, I just love how his voice is in this movie. It's so good. Also, his mask is great, but there's something off about it. It seems sharper, a little bit pointier, and longer with smaller eyes too. Either way, it looks good. It's just not my favorite out of all the Ghostface masks. But anyway, the violence in this movie matches Ghostface's scary personality and is way more in line with how he was in the first movie, which is great. The movie is also pretty tense, and it's pretty well done in that aspect as well, because kind of the other two sequels weren't very tense at all. It also balances out the mystery of who the killer is and the motives really well, which again was lacking in the third movie. There's also some great twists with this movie, and honestly, the motives, as always, one killer is kind of pointless and the other kind of makes sense. This seems to be a trend, but it works well. It's not really my favorite of the main mastermind's motives, but it works, and I really like how they went with it. Um, I also think that it was a little bit easy to see that there was more than one killer, and I do think they balanced it out pretty well in basically trying to hide who it is. But it is easy to see who one of the killers are for sure, though. And the other was kind of always at the top of my list. And the other was kind of at the top of my list as well. So, I mean, it was just kind of easy to guess overall. But either way, they handled the storytelling with the mystery aspect so much better than any of the past sequels, along with how often Ghostface is present. And it also is just overall really well balanced and a really well paced movie in every aspect. And honestly, so far, out of all of the sequels we just talked about, this is the best one. I give Scream 4 a 8 out of 10. Now, everybody, we finally get to Scream 5. And this is going to be the longest one. I have a lot of things to say to it. It's the most recent one, came out about a year and a half ago. I know I said a few spoilers here and there with the previous sequels. This one, I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more vague, just because it is a little bit more recent, and just because a lot of people are probably going to watch this or the movie itself before Scream 6 even comes out this week. So yeah, I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit more vague. But right away, let's just start with the new mask. It is probably the best Ghostface mask we've seen since the first movie. And honestly, I, I, I don't know, I kind of feel torn. I think that maybe this could be slightly better than that original mask. I'm not sure yet, but still, I love this mask. Also, the meta-ness and self-awareness is still pretty good. It's still great, though I do feel it is a little less meta, but a little bit more self-aware than the previous movies. It's also great to see that once again they treat the legacy characters perfect and it's done with respect. And we basically got to see how they've been doing this entire time. And I think they did a fantastic job. And though it is sad they actually killed one of the legacy characters, honestly, they did this legacy character's death so much justice. Like, so much justice. Though I wish these legacy characters could have shown up a little bit earlier, especially Sydney. Also, all of the new characters are great. Honestly, these are probably the best additional new characters since the first movie. All of them are fully realized and really developed and really likable. And also, I do have to say this, Wes, who is a new character in this movie, he basically makes me think of Fred from Scooby-Doo, specifically the original live-action Scooby-Doo movies. If you guys look up pictures of Wes in this movie and Fred from Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, yeah, they basically look identical in a way. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Overall, this movie was also really tense and kind of emotional too. Everything is really well balanced, and even the mystery of who the killer is also pretty well balanced. There's also some big twists as well, even though some of it is kind of predictable. I also do love how this movie kind of makes you be ready for a jump scare, but it doesn't go with it. And so this is done actually perfectly, as the movie is not very predictable with the scares. And honestly, there are some, as I said, really tense moments, and those were done extremely well, especially with Ghostface. Ghostface is really brutal here. Like, I'd say he's probably even more so than the Ghostface in the previous movie, which was Scream 4. He's also the creepiest he's ever been, and it works just so well. Especially like how he just comes out of the shadows and just like keeps looking at people. It's creepy and done extremely well. I really, really like it. I also love how he talks now, especially when he is face to face with the victims. Basically, the voice changer is kind of part of his mask, though I do have to complain, the voice is not as creepy as it is in Scream 4, and that disappoints me a lot. Honestly, it feels way more similar to Scream 3, but honestly, it's even less tense than it was in Scream 3. Like in Scream 5, his voice is just so much less scary, and that really sucks. I also do not really like that it was so easy to figure out how many killers are in this movie. Like, I was able to figure that out basically, at least how can I say this? I was basically able to figure out the minimum amount of killers that was going to be in this movie just from the opening scene. So I kind of thought that was a little predictable. And it's also really predictable to figure out who Ghostface is and whoever is involved as well. Like, very easy. Like, at the end of the movie, I'm just like, well, I guess these are probably, I think, the most predictable ones for me out of all of them, I guess. But anyway, one complaint I have with Ghostface is the scene that a legacy character dies. It doesn't really make sense given who the killer is. But I don't really want to go into too much details with that because it's really going to be spoilerish. If you guys see the movie, you'll probably understand, and I'm gonna do a video after I do my review for Scream 6 where I rank all the killers, and I'll be complaining about this particular issue in that video. So definitely check that out, because I just don't want to get into that here because it's kind of gonna be very spoilery if I mention that. But that aside, the motives for the killer is really not the best, to be honest, but it did make sense given the era, which is now, basically, that this movie was made in, and also in the context of the story. And again, the mystery of who the killer is also really well done and balanced, and it made sense. I just think it was really predictable. Another small complaint is that I do not really like that this movie is not called Scream 5, it's just called Scream. Again, it's a meta thing, I get it, and they even have a joke about it in the movie itself, so it works and they know what they were doing with this, but it's just annoying. And this isn't a thing related to Scream 5, it's related to so many movies who do the exact same thing when it's a sequel and not a remake or a reboot, and I just don't get it. I mean, I understand they try to make it so that like you get people to watch it thinking it's a new one, or it's starting a whole new like series or sequels or something like that, but it is dumb. It's kind of pointless. I don't like it. I just don't. So again, this isn't really a complaint with Scream 5. It's just in general how Hollywood has been making this choice with some of their movie titles. Also, the music and the soundtrack was just okay in this movie. They did have some of the original score of the first movie and some of the original soundtrack as well, and those worked pretty well. And I think there's two end credit songs. Those end credit songs are also pretty fantastic. But the rest of the score and soundtrack is kind of just okay. Um, Another little complaint is that this movie has a direct sequel coming out, which is Scream 6. And Scream 6 ends the new trilogy. But this movie has very little connections to Scream 4's plot. Honestly, there's only like 2 lines related to Scream 4, and it was basically just in a passing comment. So it doesn't even feel like Scream 5 is the second part of a trilogy. But honestly, it kind of just feels like the first part in the new sequel series. So it's kind of going to be weird how they're going to conclude Scream 6 as the conclusion of this sequel trilogy when this one isn't even really connected to the first part of this trilogy. But don't get me wrong, it's still connected to the previous movie, but only because of the town, of Ghostface, of the legacy characters, and the history. But the actual events of Scream 4, it's kind of only brought up like 1 or 2 times in passing comment, like I mentioned earlier. So it feels very disjointed from that, which is really weird considering all of the other sequels kind of connected with each other. And Scream 4 has the excuse of not fully being really connected with the other ones because it's set a little bit over 10 years after Scream 3, so it's okay. This one also kind of does, but again, if it's concluding a new trilogy, so it just, I don't know, it just kind of feels weird. Or it's not concluding, it's the middle of a new trilogy, so it kind of feels weird why they decided not to really touch much on that original Scream 4 arc. But yeah, it's all gonna really depend how they handle Scream 6. We'll see about that. And I'll talk a little bit about Scream 6 in a little bit. Again, movie's not out yet, just giving my thoughts on what I think might happen with it. But basically, other than all of this, I don't really have any other complaints about Scream 5. It was done so well and definitely the best of all the previous sequels. To be honest, I have to say it, this movie, Scream 5, is almost tied with the very first Scream for me as my favorite Scream movie. Obviously, the first one still being the best one. One thing though that I was kind of hoping that this movie would do is a cult of Ghostface killers, like many killers, as in like 5 or more. Or that Ghostface would be a legacy character who was good in the past movies, or who we kind of thought was killed before, but kind of wasn't. And hopefully, Scream 6 will have one of these ideas. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Scream 5. So Scream 5 for me is my favorite sequel so far. So again, I gave Scream 1 a 9. Yeah, a 9 out of 10. And I'm giving Scream 5 an 8.5 out of 10. So again, it's so close. I just had to nitpick a little bit more with it, just because it's a little bit more recent as well. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed my review on those. I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a moment, I'm not done with the video yet, to kind of just talk about my thoughts and hopes for Scream 6. As I just mentioned, on something that I really, really wanted for Scream 5 is that I always thought, and I kind of, if I remember correctly, I was kind of hoping that Scream 4 or the eventual Scream 5 was kind of going to have like a killer or a cult of killers or a cult of Ghostface. And I just think that that idea can work so well in the context of the meta-ness and the self-awareness. I really think that that would be really, really cool. And given some of the information that they talk about in Scream 2 and in Scream 5, I think that, and what I'm talking about there, I don't really want to say because of spoilers, but basically it's, let's just say, communities. I really think that they can make that work because there's something already kind of established relating to something like that, but not necessarily a cult or a Ghostface cult or anything like that. Just communities of people, let's just say it like that. And it would be really cool if there was a cult for Ghostface killers, like diehard fans who really want to do it justice and go around killing people. So, which kind of seems like what they're kind of doing with the past few movies, but I still think that that would be amazing one day. Now, in terms of the legacy character being Ghostface, again, if it's a good one that turns bad, or a bad killer from the past that came back and we thought they were dead, I think that that would be really, really cool. So these are kind of things that I've always wanted in a Scream movie, except that we never got it. So I'm kind of hoping that Scream 6 will have one of these things. And here's where we get to talking about Scream 6. I personally think that the marketing for Scream 6 has been way too revealing, especially the posters. Just to give you guys context, I have not seen any trailers for Scream 6 other than the very first initial teaser trailer. The reason for that is because I don't want to be spoiled on the movie, and I really, really feel like the set photos that's being released, which I only saw like 2 of them, and like the posters that they're releasing, it's just way too revealing. Again, I could be totally wrong, but that's why I'm not seeing any of the other trailers, and I am trying to avoid those posters so much and those press releases too. Because I don't want to have specific expectations, and be misled. So, because that's kind of what happened with Avatar 2, and it took a while for me to get those misleading thoughts out of my mind so I can really understand how the movie was actually went through. If you guys want to see my review on Avatar 1 and on Avatar 2, I'll put a link to it in the description below, and I go more in detail about that, but those are some of my all-time favorite movies in general. But anyway, for Scream 6, I just think that the marketing for it has been way too revealing, especially with the posters, so I'm trying to avoid it as much as possible. Honestly, it does seem, well, actually, we'll get to this in a little bit. Another thing I wanted to say, I'm also kind of sad that Sydney won't be in Scream 6 since Neve Campbell, I think that's how you say her last name, the actress who plays Sydney. Basically, her and the studio had disagreements on the amount of money she would be getting for playing Sydney. So they kind of just decided not to have her back, and I guess they're in a big argument with each other now. Though I do have to wish that she does have a scene, or at least have somebody say a line explaining what happened to Sydney and why she's not present in the movie. Or a wild theory I have, and it kind of connects with the theory about a legacy character. Maybe Sydney is the Ghostface killer in this movie, and the disagreement between the actress and the studio was just a publicity stunt to basically hide her from being in the movie. Though I do have to say, I do not think a lot of people would like this, and also it would not make a lot of sense given her arc throughout all previous 5 movies. So that's most likely not the case, but still, I just hope we get some information for, like, in-universe explanation for why Sydney is not in this story, or not present in the movie. The cult thing could be a possibility though, But kind of going back to what I was saying about the posters and the legacy character could probably be Ghostface. Um, I don't know. The posters all just have pictures of previous people from Scream's, the previous Scream's movie, kind of wearing the Ghostface suit just without the mask, holding the knife, saying, "Who will stab you in the back?" So it really does seem like they're kind of trying to tease, like who the killer this time is going to be someone we know. It could also just be really misleading though, and it could just be someone that the characters know and it's like their best friend and they stab them, but then that's the truth for almost every single killer in the series. So um I don't know. It could be very misleading, but I have to take it as way too revealing at this current moment. So I don't really like that. I haven't even seen really all the pictures. I only saw like two of them, and I'm like, yep, no, I don't want to be spoiled or start analyzing these things because I just want to go in and piece it together as I'm watching the movie. But going back to the cult theory, I do think that this is kind of a possibility. I mean, they're in New York, and the stab movies is like a whole concept, it's like the meta thing in it. So it could theoretically be possible, and I'll be amazed and really excited if that's the case. Because again, this is something I wanted for a long time with a Scream movie. But anyway, I'm just super excited for Scream 6, but I'm also extremely worried, like extremely, extremely, very extremely, like panicking worried about this movie because only for the simple fact that it will be set in New York. And I personally think that's a terrible idea for many reasons. And also just because I'm very worried, like extremely very worried, like extremely, very extremely beyond worried that it would be very, very similar to Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, which is a really, really, really bad and terrible movie. And really, that's one of the worst Friday the 13th movies made, like ever. Um, so, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. So, I'm very, very panicky for that. I literally have like I don't know, trauma thinking about a horror movie of a big series set in New York because of Friday the 13th Part 8. Like, it is a terrible movie. And I'm the person that likes bad movies. Anyway, also, I'm a little bit worried about Scream 6 because I really do not like the battered old, somewhat zombie looking Ghostface mask that they're going with, but it also seems like they're going with a clean mask that's very reminiscent of the mask they use in Scream 5. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Could tie into multiple killers. Maybe it could even tie into the cult idea that I've been talking about. But anyway, the zombie battered old ghost face looking mask, it kind of makes me think of the many different styles of ghost face masks that they usually release for Halloween. These are the kind of style of ghost face masks that I really never cared for, honestly. I always thought that they were kind of bad. But at the same time, if this is the original Ghostface costume from like 26 years before the events of Scream 6, I think that would be really, really cool. But yeah, maybe this is the original Ghostface costume from 26 years ago, like the one that Billy and Stu actually used, and maybe someone just got it back and that's why it looks old and battered. I think if they do it like that, I think that would be really, really cool, and that kind of gives more basis to the whole it is a legacy character returning, or rather it being a good legacy character or a bad legacy character, like a previous killer or a previous victim. If they do it like that, then I don't mind the battered old look for this new costume. Maybe it is a legacy person. They're even, getting a protege, kind of. I think that would be pretty cool as well. But we'll have to really wait and see. If that's the case, I'll really accept the new mask a lot. and I would really enjoy that concept. But with all that said, guys, I'm just so excited to see how Scream 6 will go and how it'll compare to Scream 5 and the other Scream movies in general. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry it was really long. Again, sorry if I spoiled more than you were hoping for. I really try to keep this spoiler free, but it's kind of hard to do that, especially when it's something that, you know, a movie or a game or anything that, you know, you really enjoy a lot. And yeah, it's just really hard to talk about without giving so much spoilers. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what your favorite Scream movie is. Again, I'll be recording a review for Scream 6, and I'll be up a few days after the movie's out. And a few days after that, I'll do a rank of my favorite Scream killers. I mean, not of my favorite Scream killers, but really of all of the Scream killers. I'll just be doing a rank about that. And that video would also include the killer from Scream 6. But yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day.